everybody. Welcome to part 3 of the MXA ecosystem install, the install episode. Once again, we have our expert Sean McLaughlin. Hello, joining us. I'm Jim Ripp, the director of education and live event production here at Full Compass Systems. Today we are going to go over the whole install process, but before we do that, let's get some housekeeping things out of the way here. There is a question feature. Feel free to use that at any time. This is an interactive live webinar. Gives you a chance to have access and ask questions directly to our expert here today. Also, a recording of this will be available later after it's done. So if you have to duck out halfway through, no worries. You can come back and watch the whole thing up on fullcompass.com on our Gearcast channel. It'll be there. It'll also be out on our YouTube channel as well. So, Sean, good to have you here again. Bright sunny day here in Wisconsin. Excited. I'm very excited about this. This is not our first install here at Full Compass. This is our second one with the MXA. So we love the system, and thank you so much for doing this with us.
Yeah, it was fun.
So let's talk about real quick. This is just the very beginning. The very first thing we attacked was the audio. Yep. So we took care of that first. We have lots more remodel to take place here.
Yeah.
We're going to have 75-inch screen here. New table from Salamander and Credenza. We're going to go all out with this. So this is a full redo, even paint. We're going to change the colors here slightly.
We should be on HGTV or something. Conference room remodels.
But for now, what we're going to focus on is just the install of the MXA 920.
Yeah, correct.
So, and we shot a video of, I did some work in this. You don't see me in there that much, but with Sean, with Declan, who's behind the board right now with us. And so let's just roll the video on that. So here we go. Hey everybody, welcome to step 3, the install of the Shure MXA system that we're putting here in our manager's conference room in Full Compass Systems. Again, Sean.
Hey everyone.
So let's do a quick recap. Back to step 1, we introduced you to the entire ecosystem, all the items. Step 2, we did the design specifically for this room and chose the products, or Sean, the expert, chose the products that we're going to be installing here. And here we are, step 3, at the very beginning of the install. So Sean, why don't you talk to us about what we're going to do?
We're in the manager's conference room, like we talked about in the Shure Design tool, the designer software. We talked about that we were going to rearrange the room a little bit from the PDF that we brought in. So as you can see over here, there's a display on the long wall that we're actually going to be moving to behind us in a nice credenza here. And then we're actually replacing the conference room table to be a little bit more smaller, streamlined conference room table. So including that, obviously we're doing all the MXA products. So we're going to be taking the MXA 920 microphone. We're actually going to be mounting it directly above our heads, and that's going to be kind of justified more towards the screen, since everyone at the conference room table on a video conference call is going to be looking at the screen, so it's going to pick up their voices a little bit better. And then we've also got the MX5N ceiling speakers. So we are having 4 of those mounted in the ceiling here. Like we talked about in the design aspect, it was a little more than we needed for the space, the 4, but we wanted to keep everything symmetrical. If you look up here, the lighting and everything's pretty symmetrical, so we kind of want to stick with that. So we're going with 4 of those. And then we've got the P300 DSP processor that's actually going to be processing everything, all the audio, echo cancellation, all of that in that P300. That's going to be our interface to Ring Central you guys are using. So that'll be out to Ring Central. We also need a couple other things that we haven't got in the room yet. PoE Plus switch that's going to provide all the power. Network cables have already been pulled for us in the ceiling, so it makes it a little bit easier. But we're going to get our hands dirty and cut some holes and things. So
awesome. So we're as prepared as we possibly can be, and I'm pretty excited because this is, you can see this is really not an ideal setup conferencing right now.
but we're gonna go all out. We're gonna do this the right way.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the unboxing.
Yeah, let's do this. All right.
Open it up. What are we gonna do first?
First, we're going to get the network speaker opened up here and show you, so you can see that we've got 4 of them. I'm sure I don't cut you. All right, so in here, got that owner's manual. The grill, which is actually a magnetic grill. So it's a nice, clean-looking grill. Magnetic grill, it's held onto the speaker that way, and then that's just a safety tether. So if we have an earthquake here in Wisconsin, probably unlikely something falls down from the ceiling. So then in here, we've got our speaker. This is a Dante-powered speaker, so you can see it's pretty thin, low profile. It's just got the network port on the side here, so that's going to get PoE from the switch. And then it's got these little dog legs that you pull out when you're down here, and that's how it squeezes the ceiling tile and support it up there. So it's all accessed from the front here. You've got your screws here for your dog legs to do that, and then you can see the magnets for the grill here. And then in the box here, the only other thing, we got a little knockouts if you need to cover up over here to kind of keep that protected and everything, all the dust and everything out of there.
Excellent.
So that's the speaker. Up next is the P300. So this is our DSP processor here. So again, we've got our manual, a rack here that comes in here. So if you're trying to mount under a table or to a wall behind a display, that comes in the box there. So this guy is the P300. You'll notice there's no power supply or anything. That's also going to get PoE power, or PoE plus power, I guess I should say, from the switch. So that's all going to be connected in the back here via that Dante port. Then there's a couple of analog ins and outs like we talked about last time, and a cell phone interface if you wanted to bring in a call and plug the cell phone directly into that. And then the biggest part is the USB interface. So that's going to go into your bring your own device laptop. So you're going to just be able to plug in, choose this as your microphone, and you've got the whole room ready there. So pretty simple on this guy. It's just the P300 and then all of your Phoenix connectors and the zip ties for all the analog connections. You even get that tiny little screwdriver that you're going to need to screw everything in. So everything you need in the box.
And you can use that to adjust my glasses.
Exactly. So up next is the star of the show, the MXA 920. So that's this big guy here.
This is like Christmas. I'm getting excited.
It is. So in here is our MXA 920. Obviously, you've got owner's manual, just like everything. And don't worry, everyone, it's not blue.
It's not blue.
It's white, so it's got the protective film on there. So this is the MXA 920 square. So this is going to drop directly into our ceiling grid. So this is meant for the US spec, so it's got a flange around the side, so it'll just be supported by the T-rail there. Pretty easy connection on the back here. We've got that Dante input, again, PoE plus, that's going to power this guy directly from the switch, so we don't have to run any other low voltage or power supplies or anything like that. Pretty simple.
Real simple.
Just gonna go up at the
And then
ceiling.
we're just going to drop that in. Well,
Yep.
we're going to do a little bit of a change here as we get it Z-installed.
Yeah, we do have to, because the center of the room, thank you architects, they put the rib of the ceiling grid right down the center. So what we're going to do is actually move this section here and split 2 tiles, so we're just got that symmetry. Again, you don't necessarily need to do that with the microphone because you can steer that coverage around in the space, but it just looks nicer when it's centered in the room.
And referring back to the design phase that we did, you have to make sure the logo is in the correct.
That is correct. So that logo that is right here in our design software, you always see that logo. So if I've got it in this right corner, you just want to make sure that you're orientating that the same way, because in that design software, you're looking bird's eye view down through the floor. So
And going into all of the tuning of the system.
Yep.
That is super important.
Exactly. So just make sure that your orientation's right, how you've got all the air coverage areas aimed and everything like that is all based off that LED light.
All right, let's get to work.
Awesome.
So as you can see, Sean and Declan are pretty fast workers.
Yes.
That was fantastic. I do want to point out one thing, Sean.
Yeah.
Watching that short clip. Well, actually, first thing, that was pretty fast. How long did it take, like start to finish?
It was about an hour, I would say. Yeah, there was a couple trips running around grabbing cables and some things like that. We did pre-pull all of the network cabling up and had that terminated. So, but it was about an hour for us to pull down the ceiling tiles. We had to move a couple, as you saw in there, and split them in half and have some paint dry and things like that.
Right. So we actually shift the position, change the ceiling slightly.
Yep.
And then it's once you've got those mounted, it's plug and go.
Yeah, it's really at that point it was just configuring inside the the switch and everything like that. Basically all the software stuff.
So I've done several installs myself. In fact, I did our executive boardroom here, and with this, you've done several installs as well.
Yes.
And one thing I love is when I can watch a video and learn the tricks. A wise man learns from other people's mistakes, right?
Yeah.
So I have a still shot here. Declan, if you could pull that up. This shows, it's one of the tricks that Sean used here. You can see that square that he's got there, the cardboard square, that was part of the packaging.
Correct, yeah. So we used that as the template. So that was surrounding. So we centered that on the ceiling tile and then Sharpied it out.
So that's your cutout for the speaker. But the genius part here, and the part that saved a lot of cleanup,
yes,
is that you took the ceiling tile, placed it on top of a garbage can, lined it up, drew the circle, cut it out with a Dremel type tool, and zero mess.
Yeah, so it works really well because what you can't really see in there's the ceiling tile, and then in this room there's also squares cut out of drywall, that are on top of there as a little extra sound barrier. There's a air handler, air conditioning, air exchanger all above this. So there's some insulation you saw in the video that's hanging down and stuff. So we ended up sandwiching the two layers, drying our template, zip it out right over the trash can, drops right in. Declan vacuumed up the dust. So I don't want to get yelled at by facilities leaving the place as a disaster. So,
but that's amazing. That's the type of tip that I love to see. So, are there any other issues that you ran into in the install, or
not? Overall, this room was pretty easy. Like we mentioned in the video, there's the center of the room is actually the center rail. So we ended up splitting that, moving the mic so it could just be in the middle of the room, more for aesthetic purposes than it is from an audio perspective. Just that way it's the symmetry of the room stays good. Overall, we had good ceiling height here. Didn't run into any issues with like the sprinkler system or anything like that. So it was a pretty smooth install. Only thing, is just getting the cabling over there. I didn't bring my my fishing tool, so we had to pop a couple ceiling tiles, do it a little at a time, but wasn't too bad. So
yeah, with the Cat, we ran Cat 6 cables.
Yeah.
With the Cat 6, we had a little bit issue just getting prepared for the install. Was on the back of this wall here is an elevator shaft.
Yep.
So we have drywall and about an inch of 3/4 of an inch space to get the wires down through there. So that was a little bit difficult getting the electrical run and everything.
Yep.
But once we're prepared for that, and terminated the ends, then it's plug them in and you're.
Yeah, and then really all that was just configuring the software, setting the room up. I do a lot of labeling in the designer software. So once you figure out which speaker, because we've got 4 speakers up in the ceiling, and you can use the identify, which will blink the light on there, so you know which one that you're working with in the software goes to the ceiling. So I go in and label them, right front, right rear, left front, left rear. So later on, if we have to do any tweaking, it's a little bit more obvious where everything is.
So we mentioned in the earlier webinar, I think it was the second webinar of the series, that there is certification required.
Correct.
With this. So that's kind of the easy part.
Yeah.
Right? The part where the tougher things come in is when you start to tune the system.
Yeah.
once it's all plugged in, you make sure it's all wired up and go through all of that. So Sean's going to go through some of that with us. And by the way, we are going through that mic today.
Yeah, so we're listening to the MXA, connected to Declan's computer that's hosting the webinar over here off camera via the USB interface off the P300. So we are hearing it as a far end call would hear it.
And you can't see the position, but this line in the table lines up with the center rail of the room. So that MXA is sitting
right about here.
Right above here.
And we're the setup of the room, because of the way that this room is used, is normally there's a center table here, but sometimes for larger meetings, there's people out on the sides of the room. So we set the coverage up to cover the whole space. We weren't just focusing on the table area quite yet until we get the final furniture in here. We might tighten some things up, get some more reflections off. But right now, no matter where you are in the room, you should be being picked up. So actually, I'm gonna talk to Declan. He's kind of behind me over here against the wall. But Declan, do you just want to say some beautiful words?
Hello, welcome to Full Compass, Full Access.
Well, man of many words.
Perfect.
So Declan's, on the far side of the wall there.
He's about 15 feet away from you.
Yeah,
somewhere.
You should not really hear any difference in audio or anything like that based on how we've got the coverage pattern set up.
And in webinar 2, we did that whole design phase. We laid it all out exactly based on the room. We have 4 speakers and the MXA 920.
Yep.
So let's get into the design or the tuning,
Yeah.
I guess. We talked about the design before, so now Sean's gonna give us a tour here of what it looks like. And I'm gonna say right up front, we had some technical difficulties before we started. So the shot you're gonna see is of his design software is just coming off of the monitor. If you watch the recorded version, we will have a much clearer view of the design, or sorry, the tuning of the system. So go visit Full Compass Gearcast channel or our YouTube channel, and you'll be able to see it. But for now, we're going to just take a look at the screen here.
Yeah, so we saved that design from when we did it live on air, laid everything out. I saved it. I came up to the room. I would say my largest difficulty, I had a little issues with setting up the Netgear switch a little bit. That caused me a little messing around. The device discovery wasn't turned on for the multicast, so it took me a little bit to get that all set up using the Shure preset that they've got for the Netgear AV switches, and got that all working. Really just made sure everything was online, and at that, after we did that, we associated all the products in our existing design. So we already had the layout and everything done, and we just associated that. So
now you're connected to the system right now.
Correct. I'm connected via a category cable back to the switch that's sitting under the display here. And a little hard to see here, but on our software here, down here it just shows that we have one room online, which is the room that we are in. You won't be able to read that text, but if we click down here, you'll see all of the devices that are in the room. So we've got 4 MXN5s, which are the ceiling speakers. And then I went and labeled those, MXN5CRR, which is right rear, left front, left rear, so on and so forth, based on my perspective from the TV. And then we've got the P300 that's doing the processing and using as that interface. Like we said in the design one, you guys typically bring your own devices into the room. So there's not an in-room PC that it's hooked up to. Another cool thing is we're going to be adding a Barco click share in here. So the P300 will be plugged into the Barco. You can use the wireless plug-in. You've got the audio coming from the far end of the speakers from your computer and the microphone. So it's super easy for setup and getting up and running.
Yeah, so that is it's all wireless. So it's literally the table will be clean.
Yep.
It's just the one thing you plug into whoever's presenting.
Yep.
Whoever's going to be running the meeting, and you're connected.
Yeah, so it's super slick that you don't have to deal with a bunch of cables or anything like that. That's another one of the partnerships that Shure has with many vendors.
vendors, like we've got Netgear and Barco and a bunch of other ones for camera control and other things like that if you're getting into more advanced things. So when we dive into the schematic here, so we can kind of see, we talked about how we auto route during the last webinar section here. So on the screen here, we've got our MXA 920 here, our P300, and then our 4 speakers. And I have those laid out kind of as I'm viewing them. So this is the left front of the room, the left rear of the room, right front, and then the right rear. So you've got all of that. Right now, if we look at our coverage, we kind of had our layout here of our 4 speakers. We justified those a little bit further back in the room. Our display is over here. And when Declan was talking earlier, he was actually kind of over here against the window. So this is that drawing of the room. I didn't have my plan layout in there, but we've got that. If I click on the speaker here, so you can see this is my coverage area. So we actually kind of have that whole space. Wall-to-wall coverage. So if I wanted to do this, we'll do this live. We'll see what happens. But if I can actually just change this coverage here. So, oops, I'll open up my dictionary. Now we move coverage to the back of the room. So hopefully online you hear some changes. And then we'll bring that coverage back in. So this is all real time. So when you're tuning, you can actually adjust things, see how the room behaves, and everything like that. Like we mentioned on the design one, we've got the speaker justified because normally we would be facing this way on the display, but my camera's back here. So, we're doing it that way. For the, ideally, again, you want your mouth pointing towards the microphone. So we're justified a little bit more this way than I am pointing that way. But pretty easy setup there. If we go back to our microphone, though, we can double click into here. And like we talked about, here's all the processing down here, our echo cancellation or our automatic gain control, our echo cancellation. Which is on. Right now, the echo canceller is not really doing anything because the audio, we don't have audio coming back from the far end talking out of the speakers, so that's not doing anything. We do have the noise reduction on, so in this room, you can still hear it a little bit online. We noticed this earlier. So there's actually a HVAC vent right next to the microphone. Can't really move that. So,
Very next tile.
Very next tile. But there's a little bit of a low mechanical noise because I think there's an air handler on the roof that we're getting some transmission through the actual structure. So you can hear a little bit of low end noise with the noise reduction on. And I can actually turn this off now. So hopefully on the far end, you should hear a little bit more of that
Probably
rumble a little bit. It's kind of a lower frequency thing here. So, but you can make those changes in real time, so you can turn that on and off based on that. EQ-wise, we didn't really do a whole lot here. So we did a little bit of a roll off on the bottom end and the top end. And then typically we take out a little bit around that 400 hertz frequency, just kind of get that boominess out of the room and kind of focus on the speech range. So I actually had Brian from our office at AudioBiz remote in on a call. So that's how we like to do a lot of the tuning. Tuning in the room and listening to your call because there's a little bit of delay. We were doing this before the webinar when we were testing. It's a little hard to do. So ideally, we have somebody join from the far end and have people talk around the room. So I will use my laptop in multiple different locations in the room, talk like we normally would, and see how that is behaving, adjust the EQ based on the space. But it's always good to hear it from the far end perspective.
And it's good to have that. It would be good to have that far end very well educated on the system as well.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. I guess kind of the commissioning of this.
Correct.
We help out with that.
Yeah, so we've got the ability to remote in, and that's obviously the best thing. We can remote into a computer and actually control the system and do the tuning remotely a lot of times. Makes it a little bit easier. Also, listening through the far end of the software gives you an idea of how, depending on what codec you're using, whether it's Teams or Zoom or Ring Central, GoToMeeting, whatever, you've got a lot of different options there, but you can see how their software is interacting with the microphone also. You also do have the ability, like a lot of times, tuning from a coverage standpoint, if you're trying to pick up specific areas in the room, we'll use a Dante headphone amplifier. So we can actually listen directly off the microphone, that Dante stream, versus being processed through a codec. But that helps you dial in, like if you're trying to be very specific in coverage areas and things like that. Like I said before, we had our automatic coverage set up. So the mic is choosing how many of those 8 coverage areas or lobes are functioning. It might be using 2 right now. It might be using 1. Don't really know. That's the magic of what's going on in the microphone. But if you were trying to cover specific areas, maybe you have a really reflective environment, and you want to zoom in on things, I guess I would say, I can position a coverage pattern here and make it a small coverage area. So it's just mostly picking up myself.
So I'm going to point out the tip that you gave. I'm going to refer back to that and remind people. So he's done many of these installs, and that 400K, right, pulling just slightly down to get rid of the boominess of the room. That start there. That's a good starting point.
That's one that we commonly find in there. So sometimes we'll even go further if it's an executive boardroom. Maybe we'll have the person that's doing a lot of talking come in. We've gotten pretty creative with remote tuning. I've even Brian and I use a recording from like a TED Talk that's playing on a laptop or a speaker in the room. That way you can get out of the environment, really critically listen and kind of tune things.
And I said 400K. So
yes, 400K, 400 hertz. 400K is pretty high up there.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone except for the dogs are hearing that one.
I lose it after 11.
Yes.
So you can turn it to 11.
Yes.
Reference there.
Yes.
So what's great about this is you said you have the auto setup.
Yeah.
The auto, good starting point, but if you want to really dig into fine tuning a room.
Yeah, again, that auto setup's going to, on this situation, since the microphone can do the processing, it's turning off some of the processing in the P300, doing it on the microphone, that the microphone is using its echo cancellation, everything like that. But then it also knows, here's what else I'm working with. So it puts in those high pass and low pass filters, kind of just tailoring in that speech range. And you also got to remember that your codec is very narrow. That's going out, with a web meeting and things like that. It's not full range audio. So you can process some of that out and get a better experience out of that. It's a lot of things, that over the years as we've been tuning these, it's one of those things that you really should listen, because we've seen before, like what you're doing in the room might not necessarily translate to the codec. As you're turning things up, you might be hitting a limiter or something that's in your soft codec, like Zoom or something like that. So we've found sometimes, you're like turning it up, it's not really doing anything. You're outside of the microphone at that point, and you're into whatever
That's
your
connected.
Software. Correct. Yeah, exactly. So
That connection is super helpful. Direct.
yeah. So Scott has a question here. So most soft codecs have their own echo cancellation. So is it best practice to turn it off through the computer?
So we do have it turned off. So the Ring Central, we have it fully turned off.
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to our last session. Actually, I think this might have been number 1 when
The
we
very
were
first
talking
session,
about
yes.
certifications. So we are Zoom certified, Team certified. We're using Ring Central right now. Ring Central's backbone is built off of the Zoom network, so it's also a certified device for that. But what that does is it tells the soft codec, hey, I've got a device that is certified to work with my system, so I'm going to offload that processing. So a lot of times with a whitelisted device, the software will actually turn that off. that's one of those things that, again, depending on your environment and what you're listening to, maybe you do want some processing on a computer, maybe you don't. It kind of all depends on the environment. A lot of times with rooms like this, yes, we will rely on the hardware because there's a lot more settings and things that you can do in the MXA software, the P300 for tweaking things and changing the nonlinear processing and a lot of different things to overcome things over in the room, whereas your soft codec, it's on or off, kind of thing. You don't have that granular adjustment. The other thing, sometimes it's changed over the years. Like I know with Zoom, especially over the pandemic, a lot of people were doing live performances. So they added a function that said that's like musicians audio or something like that, or true audio, which is coming directly from the source. So they're basically not processing anything. So there might be some settings that you'll want to set in your soft codec to turn off. But a lot of times when you're using that certified device, it knows I'm already plugged in and it's going to turn off that stuff automatically.
So, Sean, you showed us pulling back like that. You're showing shutting off whole sections of the room. Can you go over how you can do that more in like an individual space? Let's say you have a espresso maker like you have brought
Yes.
here many times that makes noise off in the corner, and you want to eliminate that section.
Yeah,
Or
so
kind of
you can create multiple areas. So like right now in my properties, we'll see how this works while we're doing this live because I'm not testing. But let's say I want to get the back of the doors back here. So I can actually shrink that zone. So like right here, based on this, we're narrowing up the room to just be the table or the table area. Again, you're still going to hear things outside of that coverage area because of physics. I'm hearing reflections coming off the walls, the tables, all of that. We were joking when we were testing. I have a loud voice. I can't be quiet. My wife always yells at me because I talk loud. But so like even if I'm outside of a coverage area, you'll probably still hear me. But your intelligibility should go down.
all right. So I'm gonna just say that I'm just gonna try this out. We can't hear this. You guys can, but I'm gonna roll back here, just keep talking, and see if it makes a difference as to what my volume level is. I'm still talking right at the mic.
Yes.
It may have dropped.
So you should be outside of the coverage area.
I'm outside.
Looking at my mouse, a little hard to see here, but he is probably right about here back at the wall. So Declan, who's off camera monitoring, do you hear a difference?
We do hear a difference.
All right, cool.
Yeah, so I'm kind of talking at a low level. I'll slowly come in. I'm scooting back in.
Scooting back, yeah.
And here we go. And I'm talking at a pretty low level. So I'm sure it's starting to pick it up much better now.
Yeah. So
that's my inside voice.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm gonna change my coverage back out just so we know what we're dealing with.
So part of that process and in tuning this is identifying those areas where people are going to sit, shape of the table, the shape of the room, what do you want to cover, what don't you want to hear, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I was actually going to show this if I don't want to go out of my coverage, but I can tighten up my coverage here, and maybe I'm just going to have the front half of the room, and then I can actually go in here and I can add a coverage zone, a dynamic zone or a dedicated zone. So a dynamic zone, again, the mic is going to choose what it's going to want for coverage. So right now that big dynamic, it was just one big dynamic zone.
Right.
But let's say I want a dedicated zone. You'll see it pop up on my screen here, and I can't overlap. It's not going to allow me to overlap, but I can put a dedicated zone over here. So now that's maybe a dedicated zone that's just picking up Declan if he talks.
But eliminating the people at the back of the table.
Correct. Yeah. So a lot of times this is super helpful for maybe if I've got a room that it's video conferencing, but I also have maybe a higher education where I have a podium that I'm presenting from. So I'm going to maybe create a dedicated area that's always covering the area that I'm teaching in. And then I'm going to have a dynamic zone for the audience participation. So the mic can choose, because maybe I'm covering a larger area, it'll choose what areas it's picking up based on what is going on.
So let me ask you this, you can have the full room covered. Can you then fine tune it to, like, say, your position and my position are usually the position that the presenters are going to be sitting in or standing in? So can you make this zone
Yeah, so you
louder
could,
volume than?
you can't do louder volumes, but in the dedicated zones,
Dedicated zone will,
you can do that. Now, if you go into, I always call it legacy mode, where I've got my lobes,
yes.
in there, because you've got control over each individual lobe or microphone, basically think of it, that I can increase the gain and lower the gain. So depending on
You're
how
stepping outside the auto.
correct, you're stepping outside of that auto coverage.
So- And we have the 910 in our training center,
Yes.
and the trainers will always stand in a dedicated area. And we have lots of salespeople going back through the room, and then we'll have vendors sitting in the back of the room as well. So, and we live stream every single training, so we have that dedicated area. We have it lobed out.
Correct.
Basically.
Yes. Yeah. So you've got a dedicated area in the front of the room where we're doing trainings, screen on the wall like this. And we did generally have that whole kind of front area so you can wander around. And then it's set up classroom style, so that classroom area, those aren't always on. They're turned on when they sense the noise when somebody talks. So.
And one of the things I have to stress that is so fantastic about using that mic for the live streaming takes place more than 300 feet away, or in a dedicated control room in a recording studio.
Yes. Yeah.
So we're streaming from there, yet controlling the mic from that room
Mhm.
and cameras from there. So, and it's
Yeah.
through a simple Dante network over there.
Yeah.
I have one Osio adapter that pulls the audio right straight out and puts it into Wirecast, and we stream out to all of our remote salespeople.
Yeah.
All of the trainings as well.
So we did have one more question here. Hi, Ronnie. He's got several MXA 310s in different rooms, either single or three-door room, going through QSC Core and then a Logitech TAP, Poly Crestron speakers, kind of a whole bunch of different things. So he's got a full installed system. So where the settings are, so we are in the designer software. So he's asking where the settings are that we're talking about. And then should I be using the Shure app, or should I be using, in this case, the QSC processor or the DSP settings? So I'm in the design software, the designer. So this is how you're going to see everything on the network. So you'll be able to, hopefully your MXAs are labeled, which rooms they're in and things like that. So you know which spaces you're working in. Those settings are like when you are on, if we go back to our screen here, maybe to zoom in here. Again, apologize for the fuzziness here. But when I double click, so this is my microphone. So if I double click on that, this is my 920, but this would be the same thing if I double click on a 310. In the case of a 310 that doesn't have echo canceling and everything built in, like a 920 does. So what we're going to be doing is all of your echo cancellation and shaping typically is going to be done on the DSP level for that type of things. Again, it's a different type of philosophy depending on what you're doing and how you want to process it. We kind of talked about this on the last episode. If I put this back in the non-auto coverage mode and I've got my 8 lobes, I could take each of those 8 lobes and send that to my P300, which is my processor, which is my DSP. And I can individually EQ, set gain, set echo references based on where that coverage area is set up, because it might be picking up different speakers and things like that. So when you do go to the DSP doing the processing, you sometimes can get a lot more granular. We tend to do that now that Shure has come out with the firmware that's made everything much easier with the auto coverage. A lot of times, if it's a well-behaved room, I start with the auto coverage. Let's see how it's behaved. But sometimes you go into a room that is, like every C-level boardroom. They don't care about the audio, how it sounds, it's how it looks. So a lot of times there's glass and hard surfaces and a lot of reflections. So on that time, we do tend to a lot of times turn it over to individual processing of each coverage zone to be able to get the best echo cancellation, the best EQing, the best, setup for that room, basically. So it's kind of depends on the space. Sometimes you can leave the processing on the microphone. Sometimes you do it in the DSP. But the cool thing is you got the flexibility to be able to do it in all different locations. And I would say a good, well, if I was to throw a percentage, I would say a good 85 to 90% of the rooms, the auto coverage works great, from a coverage standpoint and how it's processing its echo cancellation and things like that.
Excellent. And Ronnie, that was a great question.
Yeah.
All the way from Montreal, lots of hockey up there. So, Sean, would you consider this a medium size or small room, smallish, medium?
I would say this is a medium-sized room. We're getting the tables set up to hold 14 people. That's in this room is kind of what the table's around. So I would say that's a medium-sized room.
So getting into the larger setups, you can do multiple microphones.
Correct. Yeah.
Multiple 920s, 10, whatever 310s, whatever you have. Any tips or tricks that are involved there in the design or the install?
Biggest thing
considerations?
is mic placement and what you're coveraging. Thinking of where you've got that mic covering. Sometimes, again, like we said, if I talk towards the microphone versus if I talk away from the microphone, you hear more reflections when I'm talking away. You should hear more direct audio when I'm facing you. So sometimes thinking of multiple mic placements, maybe the mic right above me isn't the ideal for picking me up, but maybe a microphone that's, a second microphone that's in the room that's at a better angle towards my mouth, towards the sound source, might be the ideal. So thinking about that a lot of where you're positioning things. We get into this a lot more with multifunction rooms, that can be reconfigured in different orientations. We see that a lot with corporate rooms that it might be a training room, it might be a conference room, it might be, and reconfigured. So
Changes throughout the day.
yeah, so mic placement is a big thing. A lot of times you are using a more advanced DSP and you can use some of those presets. We talked about the presets in the microphones that I could have a preset that is just focused on the table. We've done this in very challenging rooms, I guess I would say before, where we'll have a preset that maybe if I'm in the giant, executive boardroom and I'm just on a solo call with a person, maybe I will just have it shrunk down to the zone of like a couple 4 tables at the front of the room versus why introduce all the noise that's in the space. So we've got presets and things like that, which come in handy for being able to kind of tune those zones.
Room or largest application that you've seen or heard of?
Oh geez, I don't even know off the top of my head. I mean, we routinely do some larger, like classroom style, like pit classrooms, at universities and things like that, or larger training rooms where you'll have 4 to 6 MXAs, in a room, based on kind of that. I'm trying to cover a lot of different areas. So, I haven't seen anything too crazy above that kind of area, but
So are you up to another challenge of doing a larger, larger space?
Yes, we're gonna do some stuff in the studio, the big room.
And I think it's Declan. Maybe I think it's like 65 feet
by probably about 150, I would say.
Yeah.
So, we've talked about that because there's a lot of trainings that go on in that
trainings
room.
in there. Absolutely.
And that's definitely a more challenging room because it's probably, I don't know, 30-foot ceilings in there.
Yes.
You know, it is, you know, a lot more noise and stuff like that. So a little bit more challenging of a space, but easily still accomplishable with the products that we've got. So
You brought up a good point. The spaces, you know, with this, you could do a whole bunch of DSP processing, right, to get it sound better. But if you really want best audio sound, sometimes you got to step outside of that and adjust the room.
Yeah.
Whether it be sound absorption, heavy curtains, the chairs you use,
correct.
all of that, just to knock a lot of that extra sound down.
Yeah. Yeah. Acoustical treatment helps a ton. You know, sometimes we get this a lot with, you know, big speakers and PAs and like house of worship. It's like, okay, well, I can overcome this by volume sometimes, but
Right.
it's not necessarily going to be pleasant to be in the room. So yeah, sometimes treating the room or looking at the surfaces that are going in there. Yeah, maybe choose a padded chair over a non-padded chair or things like that. That generally can be done. You know, to aid the design of the room. So
we have a couple more questions.
yeah, a couple more questions. All right, Ronnie had a follow-up question. Load designer layout from connecting on the network, or does it?
Read that so everybody can see it.
Okay, thanks for the answers. Can I load a designer layout from a connection to the network, or does the one who builds it have to control the access? Correct. So if you do it over the network, like I don't have to, like right now I'm connected to the switch that's
Directly. Yes.
in the room. The way that we were talking about the training room, that is on the larger corporate network. So we can actually, from the studio room or the control room, that's, I don't know, a couple hundred, several hundred feet away.
350 feet away.
350 feet away through the network. You can access that room and open that up in Designer and be able to control it. So like if you're controlling multiple rooms in a campus, once you get it all set up, again, making sure that your IP schemes are correct. If you're going through subnets and, you know, there's some networking stuff that you got to make sure so you can see everything.
Get your Dante certification.
Yes. But you can definitely control everything through that. And technically, if you've got like a VPN into a network, you could be at home or on a boat somewhere dialed in to make troubleshooting calls.
Which is fantastic for your contractor installer,
exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Then, you know, your client has an issue or something, you can
Yeah, definitely.
remotely help out.
Yep, you can check in and see what's going on. Other question we had was how can we recall presets? And yes, those are done through TCP commands. You can do it within the software, or you can use a command string from like a DSP. A lot of times we'll have that programmed into like a touch screen that's controlling the DSP. Or you can do it with a physical button, you know, kind of things. There's a lot of different ways, but yes, it is through IP control for those presets. And you've got 10 of those presets built into the microphone. So again, depending on how you're set up, sometimes maybe you're controlling a preset within a DSP, or sometimes you're controlling a preset within the microphone, but you've got options.
Awesome. I do want to say, Sean, and you guys out there, you can't hear the speakers, but you're welcome to visit Full Compass so we can bring you up
Exactly.
here. Absolutely. If you're close by, we're going to use this room as a demo room.
Yes, definitely.
For this. So the speakers are fantastic. I mean, the clarity, I mean, you can hear everybody perfectly from the far end.
Yeah.
Zero echo, which is fantastic.
Yeah, we did 4 of them in this room. By no means does this room really need 4. It worked out from a symmetry standpoint. It looks a little nicer. You definitely, this size of room, again, we were, I think, I can't remember off the top of my head, I think we're 17 by 21 or something like that.
Exactly.
We could probably have done 2 speakers in here and it would have been perfectly fine. But I like the feng shui of what it looks like.
Balanced it out, and we're all musicians who have been in front of loudspeakers all of our
Yep.
lives. So
The other thing, with, like, especially with the speaker layout, is more speakers, you can bring your overall volume down because you're bettering the coverage area. Smoother, instead of having maybe a one or two centralized in the room that you might have to turn up a little bit louder. So there are some advantages to using the multiple speakers.
So let's say we have an install, and we're nearing the very end here time wise. So again, if you have a question, get it in now. You've got let's say a long run. Is there anything else that Shure has to help in the delays that?
So you've actually got delay settings in the speakers here, so you can actually where is that? So right under our speaker processing. Again, sorry for the fuzziness, but there is a delay block, so you can actually turn on individual delay for the speaker. Right now, we don't have anything set up, but this is very helpful if you are in a larger space that maybe I'm mimicking the actual acoustics of the room. So maybe it's a larger room. I'm talking from the front. I can delay my speakers. This also comes in handy if you're using one of the MXA microphones for voice lift. So the way that voice lift works is typically that's using each individual output of the speaker. So in a larger space, if I'm talking, I'm not going to be coming out of the speaker right above me, but the speaker that's next to it, I'm going to come out a little louder. Further back, I'm a little
loud is going all over.
Exactly.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And the delay. So you being able to use the MXA, that's kind of one of the unique things. A lot of ceiling arrays like this aren't well suited to using for voice lift, and this one excels quite good at it. Looks like we got another question.
All right.
Let's see.
Yes,
Yes,
it will be on YouTube channel as well. If you go on fullcompass.com, there's a tab at the top for GearCast. Our GearCast channel has lots and lots of videos, but it will be right at the top of that page coming in the next couple of days. And
we'll have some better screen captures. We're recording in the back.
Clearer, yes.
Yes, the magic of editing later on. So.
Post-production, yes. So I think that's it, Sean. I want to absolutely thank you specifically, first and foremost, for everything you've done for us in this, coming here with me on this webinar series, aiding in the install, coaching us, teaching us, all of that. That's just fantastic. Big shout out to Shure for providing this wonderful system.
It's been a blast. I love talking about it. This has been fun to do this more as a interview style, a little bit more casual than the normal webinar, and it's been fun. It's been a good journey. We were under the wire. We already had the webinar scheduled, so we had to squeeze in everyone's schedules to get the install done. And
it took a bit scheduling around all the meetings and everything that we have here, and pulling the room apart and working around that.
But it was definitely fun. So I hope everyone enjoyed it on the webinars, and we've had really great questions throughout the whole series, which has been awesome.
So also big shout out to Declan. Everybody make some noise for Declan.
Yes.
All right. Running all this back end that he's handling all of the. We just get to sit here and talk and drink coffee. And, but he's working away like crazy back there. Thank you, Declan. We can actually hear you way over there. I think you still haven't said where.
Yes.
All right. So with that, if you have any further questions, or if you have some feedback, and by all means, if you have webinars that you want to see in the future, any type of gear that you want us to cover, or subjects that you would like us to cover, go to our, just email us at fullaccess@fullcompass.com. Declan, I think you have, if you could pop that up on there, excellent. Email that. That will go directly to me. So I will have that. If it's any questions that you have beyond this when you're watching it on YouTube later or whatever, you weren't able to make the live webinar, just email that. Where's it? Down there.
Yeah, down there.
That's right. Get used to pointing where everything is. Other than that, I think we're good. Sean, any last statements you have, or tips or tricks, or?
No, I mean, big thing. Reach out to the sales staff. with our help, the sales staff, the tech team, we can help with design questions, especially as people are coming into this and learning. So
Yes.
yeah.
Don't hesitate to reach out to your salesperson,
Ooh.
or just call in if you don't have a salesperson this year. And these guys have all been certified in this.
Yeah.
So Sean made sure that he taught us well. So
Yeah, we did get a question.
Oh, we do.
What about the camera? Is it connected via AV over Dante? No, this one is just going SDI right now.
yeah,
So working. There's a lot of stuff going on in the background here.
cables laying everywhere at this, but
But yeah, the AV or the Dante video is also a newer thing. I mean, it's been out for a couple of years now,
that
so
would be good
that is
stuff.
definitely a developing topic. So
AV over IP.
yes,
Immersive audio is another one.
yeah,
The term that's being thrown out there a lot. So maybe we'll do some of that.
yeah.
And I'm sure we'll have you back on
I'm sure I'll be back.
other gear, other technical
Yeah.
things and webinars. So thank you so much, everybody, and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks.